Hello, this video is an introduction to Photoshop. So if you have never seen Photoshop before or played with it, this is the video for you. Let's just run through this in sort of counterclockwise order. We'll start over here and we'll make our way over here and finish up on top. So as a photographer, this is an introduction to Photoshop from the photographer's point of view. I'm just going to show you what kinds of tools you'll use as a photographer. If you're in graphic design and things like that, you can go into a lot of these in greater depth, but as a photographer, I think you'll really only use a couple of these. So this is the move tool. It's just sort of grab your image and move it around. Don't use that very much. Select tool. You can see here that if you push Control, you can get the different kinds of selections. There's 3 different kinds of options for selections. You can see here. And so for example, I have got a rectangle tool, do a rectangle. Now I have this selected. I can subtract to it. You see the different options here. By the way, this is called your option bar. So you have your toolbar. Every tool has its different options. So for example, this is a subtraction. If I just stay right there, it should come up with a little, no, sorry, this is add to selection. So if I click on this one again, let's go to the elliptical tool and drag right there. You can see that it subtracted because I clicked on the subtraction one. Let's say I want to add to it. Click on that one, go right there, and now I've added to it. So you can get all sorts of different kinds of selection shapes with this. You can also just do a freehand, or you can use sort of this smart selection tool, and it will actually try and find out what you want to select. So if I want to select this wheel, it does a pretty decent job. Let's say I wanted to then get rid of the middle. I can do something like that, and you can see that I can start to select some things. So those are your selections. I use that pretty often. Here's your crop tool, probably the first tool you're going to use. Got your crop here. You can go in, really make sure that you utilize some of the composition techniques like rule of thirds and symmetry and things like that. If you go out, so if you grab the corner, you can do that. You can crop, but if you go out a little bit further, you can see that the cursor changes to a rotation tool, and you can rotate it. You can tell that the crop is going to stay with it, so you don't have any of these big white areas. So, and we also have these kind of guidelines to help us make sure it's level. And then you can go over here and just click the check button or the enter key to crop it. Eyedropper tool, you can use some. You can grab colors and all sorts of things. Color sampler. I use that really only in one situation. I'll show you in another video. This one's cool. This one's used to get rid of certain things like maybe power lines, or if you want to get maybe rid of a zit or something like that in someone's face. Just go right here, your option bar, you can make it a little bit bigger, and you can just click right there, and it should use what's around it to decide what to do with it, and you just kind of get rid of some stuff. So I can get rid of things. It's not the best tool always. Sometimes it doesn't do a very good job, but some other times it does a great job. Alright, brush tool. As a photographer, you're going to use this brush tool probably really in one case, and that's for the layer masks. And if you are on black, your foreground's on black, you can draw black. If your foreground's on white, you can draw white, or you can go and grab another color from somewhere else and use that. But this is more for layer masks, which I won't talk about in this video, but definitely in an upcoming video. Okay, so this one's called your clone stamp tool. This is also very cool for trying to get rid of things in your photograph. So let's make the size of my brush a little bit bigger so I can show you exactly what this is doing. If you don't want to go up here, you can just click the left bracket tool, left bracket tool, make it bigger. Right bracket tool, sorry, the right bracket tool, make it bigger. Left bracket tool, make it smaller. It's an easy way to make your brush bigger and smaller. So watch this. So if I wanted to duplicate something or get rid of something, I can press the Alt key, and that gives you these crosshairs, and I'm going to select just by clicking on it, and then you can see what it's going to do. It's going to copy it right here. So I can just copy something, and this is really good if you're trying to get rid of somebody or you want to copy a tree or something. Lots of good reasons to use that tool. I'll get into that more in another video. Okay, so I don't really use many of these. I use the gradient sometimes, but what I do use is the burn and dodge and burn tool. Talk about that later. And let's move down. The next tools I use, like I said, are these swatches. You can go, you can switch the swatches by pushing these little arrow keys. Alright, so then let's move over here. One thing that you're going to, yours might look a little bit different than mine. It'll probably look something like this. And you'll see that just a tiny little layers palette. What you really want to use a lot is the layers. It's called a panel, layers panel. All these are panels over here. So as a photographer, you're going to see a lot of layers building up in here. I only have one layer right now. You can see that it's locked. If I want to unlock it, you can just drag the lock to this little trash can, and that will unlock it. Those are some first thing you'll probably want to do is unlock the layer. It doesn't actually do anything. It just means now you can really edit it. If you wanted to copy the layer to get another layer, you can just drag it right down there, and it will, sorry, that was the group. Copy it right here, and that'll make a copy. Or you can just click right there, and that'll make it a blank layer. Let's collapse some of these so we can get an idea. Okay, so if you want to turn them off and on, you can just turn them off right there. So now you can only see my blank layer, and if you want to get rid of a layer, you can just drag the layer to the trash. Those are some, you're going to see a lot of things building up in here. You might have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers for one photograph. So one of the most obvious layers that you're going to have, I can get rid of this blank one, is an adjustment layer. A lot of adjustments for your photographs. So naturally you can have a brightness adjustment layer. So if you decrease the brightness of a photograph, it kind of increases the amount of color. You can also change the contrast slightly, and you can see that it's building a new layer right there. You can also have saturation. Try not to saturate your photos too much, but you can just increase the saturation slightly. You can also increase the lightness, and then if you don't like it, you can turn it off and on to see the before and after. And if you don't like it, you can just get rid of it. Okay, something that is also useful is zooming in and out. So I zoom in and out quite often. There's a couple ways to do that. If you click the Z button, it'll give you your zoom tool. Just click and drag to the right and you'll zoom in. Click and drag to the left and you'll zoom out. Another way to do it is spacebar, Command or Control Alt, and you'll zoom. You can just hold the cursor down and zoom in and out. A couple ways to do that. Okay, so besides these two panels here, you're not going to use very many of the other ones, color swatches and stuff like that. Maybe not too much with photographs. One thing you will want to know is the history button. So this tracks a decent amount of your history, not all of your history. That's why you want to have a lot of layers here so you can go back in time pretty easily. But this will track, I don't know how many, but maybe 20 or so adjustments. What you might also want to do every so often is click this little camera button. So it'll create a snapshot is what it is. So you can go back to certain snapshots. Say, okay, I'm going to take a snapshot every 4 or 5 adjustments just to see how far I've gone, and you can double click these and rename it if you want. And if you just click on there, it goes back to the original image. There's your snapshot. That's what you've done so far. Okay, and let's go up here. So now we have the actual menu, and there's a menu for layers, there's a menu for the selections that you take, there's a menu for the types of editing you do. So just as a photographer, the ones I use the most will be Free Transform, which is also Control T. Free Transform, you can change the actual you can squeeze sorts of things. That's pretty often used. You can do it by hand if you want. You can even rotate it. It's like the Move tool, but the Move tool keeps the pixels the same length and width. You can change the length and width and rotation in Free Transform. Another one I use, you can do all sorts of kinds of warps, skewness. You can rotate it, flip it, all sorts of things. Okay, so the mode, you can go grayscale here. That'll turn it to black and white. One thing I use in the adjustments a lot is the levels and curves. And these are different. Some of them are kind of different. You can get levels here. I use this one a lot, or you can use the levels here, but it comes up slightly different in the menu, but I use this one more often. Get to that again later. Selection, different kinds of selections. You can select all here and then start subtracting some of the selections using that tool like we talked about before. Deselect, Command D. You see myself, if you see me deselecting quite quickly, that's because I'm clicking Command D. And then the filters. There's lots and lots of filters here. One thing I use a lot is High Pass, which is found in the Other. You'll go to Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. That'll sharpen your image a little bit. You can reduce the amount of noise. If your ISO is quite high, you might want to do that. All sorts of things. I use Pinch quite a bit, and Gaussian Blur I use quite a bit, and that's probably about it. I don't use very much more than that. Obviously lots of options, and that's about it. That's Photoshop in a nutshell for photographers. That'll sort of get you around navigating this huge program. So good luck.